Welcome to Western Sydney Community Forum Interactive live stream. My name is Catherine Madziva and I'm part of the policy and programs team, and I will be your host for today. I would like to begin by first acknowledging the traditional custodians, the Darug people on the land on which I am meeting you today. I would like to pay my respects to elders past and present and acknowledge their connection to land, sea, and community. I extend my respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander friends and colleagues who are joining us today. For those who are experiencing our live streams for the first time, they are a series of sessions that bring together community services and stakeholders in Western Sydney, particularly during this time of the pandemic, COVID-19. I would like to first acknowledge that we have experienced very uncertain times and uncertain environments, and that we are all doing a very good job at supporting communities. Today's session is around young people and youth-related violence. In recent months, there has been growing concerns as reports of young people engage in violent behaviours, I should say, all over New South Wales, including Western Sydney. Issues like youth-related violence are commonly seen as only a young people's problem, an example of bad behaviour or an issue that is solely the responsibility of young people and separate from the wider community. Typically, youth-related violence is associated with gang-related violence or other criminal activities. This is not the complete definition of what youth-related violence is or what it looks like. According to the World Health Organization, youth-related violence includes any intentional use of physical force or power to threaten, harm other young people. And this can range from bullying, physical fighting, or even property damage. Young people can be the perpetrators of violence, yes. However, it must be noted that young people are also at times victims of this violence. But also young people hold the key to solving these issues as well. For this session, I would like to clarify that when we are speaking about young people, we are speaking of those aged between 12 and 24. As this is an interactive live stream, I would encourage all of you all tuning in to ask questions and leave comments. Those that are joining us in this room virtually, of course, you are able to raise your hand and verbally ask any questions that you may have to the panel, or alternatively, you can drop your question in the Q&A box. We are also being joined by those on YouTube. Welcome to you all. And you are able to also write your question in the Q&A box, and our YouTube correspondents will relay that to me as well. We will do our best to get through all of the questions, so please bear with us, and yeah, we'll get through them. So, we have come today to explore the intersectional nature of youth-related violence and appropriate responses that include young people, communities, and decision makers. And to explore this, we will be hearing from 3 practitioners who work with young people in various ways. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce our first panelist, who is JT. He is the Creative Director from the Blacktown Youth Services Association, or fondly referred to as BISA. Welcome, JT.
Hi, everyone. My name is JT. I am the Program Manager here at BISA. I have worked in the community sector for the past 12 years. 8 of these years have been here at BISA. I have a strong passion for culture, music, and creative arts. And I work with some of the most at-risk, and we like to also say in-risk and vulnerable young people here in Western Sydney.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. I'll just go further to explain who BISA is. So who are we? BISA is the acronym for Blacktown Youth Services Association. The little house on the corner of Prince Street and First Avenue was first established back in 1988 and has been here for 33 years. BISA is a youth organisation dedicated to fostering and nurturing young people in our community. We give second chance to young people that society has given up on, and we aim to build a community where no young person gets left behind. Thank you.
Thank you for that, JT, and detailing the incredible work that BISA does in our communities. Our second panelist today is Dr. Girish Lala, who is a research fellow at Young and in Resilience Research Centre at Western Sydney University. Thank you, Dr. Lala, for joining us today.
Thanks, Catherine. It's a real pleasure to be here.
No worries. And our final panelist is Derek Tweed. He is the community development worker specialising in youth at Liverpool City Council. Thank you, Derek, for being here today.
Thanks, Catherine. It's lovely to be here.
Amazing. I'm just going to jump straight into it. It goes without saying that COVID-19 pandemic has been unprecedented and a challenging time for all communities in various ways. I will direct this question to you, JT, first. How have the young people BISA works with and supports experienced the pandemic, and has this contributed to the youth-on-youth violence we are seeing?
Yes. So COVID has further exacerbated the already existing disadvantage for some of our young people. There has been an increase in poor mental health. There has been an increase in pressure at home, which leads to domestic violence. And it also has triggered already existing trauma. Now, what people don't understand is that some of these young people have been experiencing pandemics their whole life. So this has already further exacerbated some of those struggles and hardships. But what COVID has also done has also given the wider community the opportunity to experience some of the struggles that these young people have been facing their whole lives.
I'm really touched by the statement that you said, experiencing the pandemic their whole lives. I think that gives us a very clear understanding of the vulnerabilities that young people do face.
Yep.
Dr. Garish, I will direct this question to you. As it's well documented, well, currently it's becoming well documented that young people experience life in very diverse and different ways, and this is critical in understanding and responding to issues young people do face. So Dr. Girish, I'd ask you, how do you see intersectionality playing out and impacting young people in Western Sydney?
Thanks, Catherine. Yeah, look, so intersectionality is an interesting concept, and it's a really important concept. I think, let me just give you a quick definition, I think, of what intersectionality means. Now, this is my definition as a researcher. Now, understand that this is my context as a researcher. One of the things about intersectionality is that people have some varying different interpretations of intersectionality and the way that they practice intersectionality and the work that they do. So this is a definition that sort of explains the way that I approach intersectionality, and I hope also will explain why it's important across a number of contexts, but particularly as we're talking about the context of Western Sydney University, why it's important there as well. This isn't to say that it's the only definition. So from my perspective as a researcher, intersectionality is really like a theoretical approach. It's a framework that assumes our experiences are shaped by multiple social conditions or categories or factors, like, for example, our race, our gender, our social class. And that it says that to understand and address barriers and issues and negative outcomes, we need to consider all of those multiple conditions rather than just looking at a single condition independently. So an important thing about intersectionality is that it's really trying to understand the overlapping ways in which various categories, so biological, social, cultural, intersect and contribute to social inequality. And one key implication of that is that this means that it's about power relationships inherent in those categories. And so it's really about understanding the current conditions and developing effective solutions. And so it's about social change. Okay. That's really from my perspective, what intersectionality is about. And that's why I think it's relevant and important to the issues that we're discussing today.
Thank you for that. JT, I can see you nodding your head. Is this true in the work that you do?
Yes, I do agree with Dr. Garish. When we talk about youth violence, we have to look at it as from a holistic approach. As Dr. Garish said, it's not one singular thing. There's many elements to this. And we can't just be selective on certain elements that we want to address and discuss. Because the reality is there are so many factors that lead to youth violence. And some of them are trauma, racism, poverty, domestic violence. When young people experience this their whole lives, it becomes their norm because it's all they know. They've had the odds stacked against them their whole lives. They're angry, they're frustrated. They feel like there's no way out and there's not enough positive opportunities to distract them from the negative ones. So yeah, that's my input.
No, thank you for that insight. I will turn to you, Derek. We've heard from JT and Dr. Garish talking about centering youth voices around issues that impact them, as well as understanding some of the challenges that young people face. How have you seen council engage with vulnerable young people to address issues like youth-related violence in the community or any other issues that they face?
Thanks, Catherine. So at Liverpool Council, we're very fortunate that we have a very supportive council and management in supporting what we do with young people, and they see young people as a valuable asset. We have many different types of mechanisms that we try to do from a community development standpoint. We have a Liverpool Youth Council, and that's a mechanism to between council and young people to try to work out other issues there. Are council not listening to young people in certain things? Can council do better on certain things for young people? So they kind of the voice of the young people in the community. We have a Liverpool Youth Workers Network, and that's a monthly meeting. And we have quite strong collaboration with services that work directly on the field, similar to what JT does with BISA. So in Liverpool, we have similar type services. We provide annual Youth Week activities where we try to engage young people and give them a voice. And it's also, I guess, a soft entry point to youth services in the local area. And then some other things that we do are school holiday activities. We are currently trying to get the Midnight Basketball program back running again. We have had that in the past, and that's a really good structured program on a Friday or Saturday night when I guess young people are most at risk of kind of engaging with antisocial behaviour. And we also try to run a lot of music activations and get young people involved in the planning, and also to pay them for performances and things like that. So we try to get them learning, I can do this, and I can actually maybe, do this for work or for a career, or kind of work on those and then link them into services who support them.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear. And I know that BISA, I believe, also have a music and studio space, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that's correct. We come at a creative arts life school and cultural approach. And young people love that, and it's a tool that we use a lot, and we have used for many years to engage them. And then once we have them through the doors, then we start focusing on their passion and purpose in life. And in saying that, we're very big on like Derek said, having everything youth-led. Young people need to lead the way. Young people need to be the center of all designs and decision-making process for their lives. They're the experts of their own lives. Young people just don't want to be consulted. They want to be part of the creating the change process, the change that they want to see. So that's what I've come to learn with working with young people for so many years, and as well as having day-to-day conversations with them.
So what I'm hearing is young people definitely want to be part of the solution, get their hands dirty, do the hard work that needs to be done.
they're coming here every day with ideas, and we're constantly on our feet trying to create opportunities for them, because there's the lack of opportunities. Like I said earlier, there's too many negative opportunities that outweigh the positive ones, and that's why you find them in the streets doing youth violence, as well as many elements and factors that come, underlying factors as to why they do those things.
We'll definitely come to that point, because I do want to explore that a little bit further, JT. We do have an audience question from Nadiana, if you'd like to speak.
Sure, thanks, Catherine. And thank you to each of you for all your insights already. I'm really excited for this. One thing that you're mentioning, JT, is about young people leading the way and wanting, and Catherine, you just said getting hands dirty and doing the hard work and going the hard yards. And I could see Girish and Derek nodding their heads as well during that. I know Western Sydney Community Forum interviewed Eski from youth from Street University, and that was a similar thing that came up. Now, my question is, can any of you, the three of you panelists or yourself, Catherine, give examples of where this is happening with young people being involved? And because it's been spoken about so much, is this something that's just not happening? And if so, how can we better involve young people? I'm asking that as a young person myself, technically, for another few weeks. So I'd like to know how can we better involve young people in the processes of not just community services, but beyond that as well. Thanks, Catherine.
Yeah. Derek, if you'd like to start, or JT or Garish.
Yeah, I can start. So I think having things like we've got our youth committee is a really good way, because that allows young people from the community to meet together regularly. So you're working with the council, but you're also able to put forward your ideas or I guess notice things in the community where changes need to occur. We've had a number of circumstances with, not specifically relating to violence, but where young people have noticed a thing in the community and they said, oh, why isn't this happening, or what can we do about it? And by bringing it to the youth committee, and then we've got support of the councillors and the mayor of the committee, and then it can go to council and the changes can get made. So I think by having a voice, giving them that opportunity is probably the first step to making some change.
Yeah. Can I alter that question a little bit? For specifically you, JT, how do we engage vulnerable young people who may not fully engage in those formal structures of engaging with council? How would we go about engaging with them in the decision-making process?
Yeah, sure. So I guess the most basic response to that is literally just creating more safe spaces for young people. Real mentors with lived experience. We need to stop focusing on the ticker box approach for government. And we need to just start doing stuff. The facts are there. There's a lot of research going on right now, but there's not enough delivery. Like I said earlier, there's not enough opportunities. And basically what BISA has been working on the last year is to create a model, and it's called the Youth HQ model. And what that does is put young people at the center, at the forefront in decision making. We get young people who come through the doors, from video clips to fashion design to actually joining meetings like this and consulting, with people who have a lot of powerful positions where they're able to contribute and make effective change to their communities. Young people want to see the change that they want in their lives. And a lot of young people, they feel like that there's not enough opportunity for them to do so. So it's creating more safe spaces with real mentors who have lived experience, who know what it feels like to bury a friend as a result from violence, who know what it feels like to have sleep for dinner, who knows what it feels like to be incarcerated by a system that's punished their whole lives, who knows what it feels like to have your back up against the walls, where you're put into a situation where you have to stab or be stabbed. This is the reality of youth violence, and this is what's happening in our streets. And that's why it's so important. It's so crucial to have leaders and mentors who have the lived experience, so they can, navigate these young people the same way they navigated their way out of these survival scenarios and survival situations, which is basically the story of their lives.
No, thank you for that, for those insights. Garish, I can see that you have your mic on. The floor is yours.
Yes, thanks, Catherine. I just wanted to add just a couple of things to what Derek and JT have said, and absolutely agree, particularly around this idea that JT was talking about safe spaces. So I'll just mention very quickly two projects that we have undertaken recently in the West, and one is around an evaluation of the 2168 Children's Parliament at Liverpool City Council that Derek and I'm sure lots of other people know about. It's a fantastic, absolutely fantastic project. We went in and did an evaluation of that, and so we talked to the children who were involved in that about their experiences and whether or not they thought it was worthwhile, and how that their involvement there translated into meaningful dialogue with decision makers, and so the experience of the children there was really positive. And so because that took place, the Parliament took place over a period of time, it was an opportunity for them to build trust with themselves, between the groups of young people themselves, but also with the adults and decision makers they were dealing with. And so this idea of trust is really important there. The other project I want to talk about is that we were in another LGA in Western Sydney fairly recently, where we partnered with council, and council were really genuinely interested in understanding the issues on the ground that were that were affecting young people, children and young people. So we worked with kids from the age of 6 through to about 18. Council were really interested in understanding those issues and having children involved in those solutions. We worked with intergenerational audiences, not just children. We talked to their parents, we talked to stakeholders, service providers, but the way in to children was, as JT said, through safe spaces. So we partnered with service providers who were working with vulnerable children. We partnered with community organisations, the equivalent of that were providing services equivalent to what BASA are providing in that local LGA. We partnered with after-school programs where kids were coming along, and we went to those programs and we talked to kids there. And we went 2 or 3 times, so kids got to know us a little bit, to develop that trust, and we engaged with kids in the places that they felt were safe. Right? And so that's really key.
No, that's a wealth of knowledge that you both have shared. This is a little shameless plug. We did a live stream around children and safe spaces, and some of the themes that you were both speaking about came through there and are coming through now. It seems like the approach that we need to take needs to be very dynamic to meet children and young people, particularly young people, where they're at that time, if I got that correct. I'm going to turn to something around young people and their identity. And during this adolescent time of 12 to 24, those are very formative years, as we all know very well. And young people are creating their identities, and those are shaped by many factors, whether that be family, cultural elements, social expectations, schools, friends, all of that kind of stuff. And we're seeing social media playing a more critical role in how young people view themselves, their peers, and the world. So what I would like to ask, once I get my notes in order, looking particularly at social media, how are young people influenced or influence other people in shaping social identity, connections, and belonging? And I'll throw that to you, JT, to start off with.
Sure. Now, as you know, young people constantly getting labelled or targeted in social media and mainstream media as well. And some of the labels that are often associated with young people from Western Sydney, are words like druggies, lowlives, criminals, thugs, no-hopers, negative stuff pretty much. But what people don't understand is that so many young people are born into, circumstances that are out of their control. And what that does, it creates this negative perception, this negative stereotype for young people. And so when young people go everywhere, they kind of feel ridiculed, or they feel judged constantly all the time. So what that does, it pushes them out to the outskirts, and they do feel like outcasts. And through that process, you have young people who tend to disconnect, or find themselves, or get into the mindset of that they have no sense of belonging. And so basically, humans need social connection. And when a young person doesn't have opportunities to connect, they will seek it elsewhere. And unfortunately, it's in the streets or through youth crime. And, it goes back to not having, a lot of opportunity, a lot more opportunities, because I know there are current opportunities that are currently existing, but I feel like that there has to be more, and current systems and current, opportunities could do with a bit of tweaking. Labels and stereotypes have happened way before social media. It's just another new platform for the young people, or people to promote it further.
Could I ask to just go a little bit deeper into that, JT? Does social media, or the posting of videos when someone has done a violent act or anything like that, does that also create a sense of community and connection, or any kind of reputation or rapport amongst young people?
Community. Okay, this is a tough one, and I have to be very strategic, but I will answer it in the best way that I can. I guess it goes back to my earlier points, about really not looking at a singular element, and try to understand that there are many elements to that. When it comes to your answer, young people we are born in the generation, the technology generation, where social media is young people, it's their norm. They were born into this. My generation, we weren't, back in my days, we were still using phones that stay connected in your home. So we did not have those the opportunities to have mobile phones on us all the time. In terms of street credibility, and in terms of, the young people, they like to call it clout, which is, being famous or doing certain things, trendsetter and all that stuff. I guess you could put that right in there with all the other negative elements that come into this play. I did say it before, I don't like focusing on just one part of it. There are many elements to this that are contributing factors to youth crime and youth violence, and social media and promoting it and posting it is just one of the many.
No, thank you. That was a great answer. I will turn to an audience question that we received here from William. And it reads, do the panelists have any advice on how to create a safe space for young people? And Garish, I will turn to you before I turn to Derek.
Sure. Look, this is an issue that we have confronted in a lot of the work that we do. We go into communities and we generally work around issues that are sensitive, that can be confronting. We work with intergenerational audiences, but we work with young children, and so it's a tough issue. It takes time. That's all. There's no quick fix. You have to. It's really important to consult with community members who are experienced on the ground. People like JT, people like Derek. We can't just go in and assume that we know that we will know the best ways to connect. And so we need to do the preparatory groundwork. We will consult with partners who are doing that work there, who children may know or trust, or else who have connections to people and spaces that children know and trust. So that's the first thing. Do that groundwork. The second thing is, it's really important that we've found to let children, give children space and time to get to know you. And so, for example, I talked about the project that we had just completed, where we had gone into a local LGA. What we did there was that before we went in several weeks sort of weekly for a couple, 2 or 3 weeks beforehand, and just sort of hung out a little bit in the spaces that children were. And it might have only been, this was with the invitation, etc., of the organisers. Of course, we gave everyone a heads up, but we went in and we sort of hung out, and it might have just been for 5 or 10 minutes to start off with, 20 minutes, and got involved a little bit in what the kids were doing, introduced ourselves, upfront and honest. This is what we're here for. This is what we're going to be doing. But it gives children an opportunity to start to know you. So you can then start to ask those questions. So that's really important. And then the third thing I'd just say is that it's really important to be open and honest. This is what I'm here for. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I hope to achieve, right? We're not going to change the world. I can't overpromise, but this is why I'm here. This is what we're aiming to do. And this is how you can help. Your voice is going to be really important. And so those are the sorts of things that we have done, that have worked relatively successfully to allow us to, interact effectively with children.
No, that's great. That's great insights. The honesty part, I think, is something that we hear a lot, that young people and children as well can see through a facade or things that are disingenuous. Derek, I will turn to you. How do we create those safe spaces, and what would they even look like?
Yeah, well, I was pretty much, what JT and Girish have both said, and what you just said then, Catherine. I think you need to be authentic with young people, because especially young people who, are from the tougher side of town, that they've had bad things happen, or they've had people come and haven't been trustworthy with them and just use them for whatever, ticker box activity it may be. So I think it takes time. You need to build up that trust, and you need to show your authenticity, and that kind of depends upon what your role may be. And for example, I don't do a lot of face-to-face work in my role. It's more community development. So I couldn't go into a same situation as, say, JT would do and have that connection, I guess, straight away with young people. So I need to build that up, but I need to show that I am trustworthy, be honest while you're there, and what you're hoping to achieve by participating in that and opening that space up. And you have to do that by being authentic, because they're going to see right through you if you're not. So yeah, and that takes time, going over several times. That might be to going to a service where there's a group meeting, or just a general drop-in, hanging out, being there, because some normal, more formal type clothes, and they might think, oh, is this guy a police officer? Or, what it might be. So you need to work with them, get to know them, and open those lines of communications, I think, is the best way to explain it.
Yeah.
Catherine, can I just make 2 other quick points just about that? The first thing is that don't underestimate kids. Kids can have sophisticated understandings about their lives and experiences. Kids are the experts on kids, right? And so don't underestimate the sophistication and the value of what they can tell you. And the other thing is slightly different, and it's really just about the way that we operate our methods. We use lots of qualitative, creative, discursive sort of methods, and so storytelling. We get kids and drawing and mapping, and we try to make the ways that we interact with kids engaging and fun, because that rather than just sort of giving them a survey or asking a series of questions, because in that interactivity, that engagement, we've found can be quite effective as a way of getting information, and I have to say, not just from children, because we use the same methods with adults across intergenerational audiences. We use those methods, but often we find it's really effective with children in particular, particularly younger children as well.
No, thank you both for your insights. I'd like to turn.
Oh, sorry.
I will come back to you, JT. I'd like to hear from the audience. We have an audience question live here. Camille, if you'd like to ask your question. think we're having a bit of technical difficulty. Oh, there we go.
Sorry about that. Yes, so my name is Camille. From what I've heard so far, it's these approaches are about like organizations, service providers, being able to build safe spaces and engage authentically with young people. But obviously, we all have our personal lives as well, and we do interact with young people in our day-to-day lives. Is the approach different for trying to build safe and inclusive spaces in day-to-day life? Because I think a part of it is sort of trying to change community attitudes and collective attitudes, even outside of our work. So I was just wondering if the approach is different, and if so, how? Thank you.
I think we have a similar question to that of Camille. It's hot off the press. In conjunction to Camille's question, Nicole from Waverley Council, who operates outside of Western Sydney, wants to know, how do we create those safe spaces like Camille said? And if we have even any examples of partnership work or anything like that. JT, I will come to you first, as you had something to say earlier.
Well, I just wanted to say earlier that I agree with the both of them and just wanted to further elaborate. But I'll further elaborate and answer your question. How do we create safe spaces? You have to immerse yourself in youth culture. How do you find youth culture? Ask the youth. They will tell you exactly what you need to know. I know that if you really want to get the authentic, real, raw answers that you're looking for, then you would have to go into juvenile detention centers, housing places to get the authentic ones and authentic answers. But immersing yourself in the youth culture, asking young people what they want. And not having government or funding bodies tell them what they need in life. Young people have the answers. Like Dr. Girish said earlier, young people are the experts of their own lives. Policymakers are not. Young people are. Ask the young people what they want. Immerse yourself in the youth culture. Saying what in relation to what was said in the last point, and it needs to be genuine. You need to be authentic. These young people are like lie detectors. They will catch you out if you are, trying to beat them around the bush, and they are more than happy to tell you how they feel about it. So being authentic and being genuine. And we need more leaders. We need more leaders. The right youth workers in the forefront, sharing, paying forward their lived experience. They need to be. It needs to be. They need to pass it on to the next one so they can pull them up, pass down the ladder and pull them up. A lot of young people are really confused now with everything that's going on in the world, and leaders and mentors and adults who have been through similar experiences and similar scenarios. I find through my personal lived experience that I have better engagement. How do I know the answer? Because the young people that we're talking about used to be me. I came from the struggle. I had nothing and resorted to criminal behaviors to survive. But I was one of the lucky ones that was blessed enough to have the right youth workers support me and help me navigate my way through life. And through these workers, there was no judgment. There was no understanding. They genuinely cared about me and always went above and beyond. These mentors believed in me and saw the potential in me long before I discovered it myself. And they actually saved my life. I would not be sitting here today if I didn't have the right youth workers or the safe spaces, and if they weren't being genuine, authentic, and real with me.
No, thank you for that personal experience, for sharing that personal experience with us, JT. I think this really helps us to see exactly what we're talking about.
I would like to say that I am living proof in what it looks like on the other end when you invest and generally work with these young people. I've been through it all, and I have been in this sector for 12 years. Thank you to my mentors and the leaders before me that guided me and got me here. It would not be for them. So yeah, I can't take all the credit.
No, absolutely. Unintentionally answered one of our audience questions from Sean, and it was, the youth sector has a rich history of young people formerly at risk or in risk transitioning into becoming youth workers and impactful mentors themselves, like you, JT. What I will ask our panel, whether it be in policy or in council or in community work, community organisation, is there a way or a pipeline that can support young workers, in making the leap and having the longevity in that career? So Garish, I might turn to you. In the work that you do in the policy space, how do we engage young people so they can go on to almost have their voices heard in formal structures?
I'll answer that question in a couple of ways. The first thing is that we actually, when we in the projects that we do, working with young people, we really try to involve, as much as we can, we try to involve young co-researchers who work with us. And so they might, and they're often, because I work at a university, university is my base, they're often our students, not always, but often, who will come in and act as co-researchers, and because they are young people themselves, have, potentially more, or they certainly know more about the youth experience than I do as an older person, but they also potentially connect more with other young people, just at face value. We have also, but the co-researchers, young co-researchers we work with aren't always students. Where we can, if we can go into communities and there are young people there, maybe through NGOs or who have been identified by other stakeholders who we can take on board and who might be interested in helping us as co-researchers, they will become involved as well. So it's a partnership there. That's one of the things that we try to do. It's not always possible. That's what we endeavour to do as much as we can.
Yeah.
I lost track of the second part of that question. I'm sorry. What was that?
No worries at all. If it does come back to mind, please feel free to include that into this discussion. Derek, on the same question of essentially equipping young people to be those change makers and have a longevity in this kind of space, in the work that Liverpool Council or councils in general do with young people, what does that look like? I know you mentioned a youth parliament and some networks.
Yeah, so we've got, most councils will have some sort of youth advisory committee, and certainly one really good way for young people to learn about, what local government does and how they can maybe influence that or, provide better opportunities for young people in that community. We do have, as Girish mentioned as well, so we have the 2168 Children's Parliament, which is a younger age group. So that's years 5 and 6 at primary schools, but that's working in the most kind of disadvantaged area of the Liverpool LGA. And that's kind of preparing those children to be those advocates, because they work within their school group and they talk to the kids, and they've identified things like poverty and bullying and healthy food at the canteens, a whole variety of different things. And they're able to talk to people of higher standing from the government and from education department. And that's a real beginning step for them to go on and then become potentially involved in the youth committee when they get a bit older. And then within that, I guess the real good thing about being in that youth committee is then you're, have opportunities to get into a lot of other youth committees. So there's Youth Action New South Wales have a whole bunch of different ways, and they train young people how to be advocates. There's the Advocate for Children and Young People, there's Health, all these different organisations want to hear from young people. And I guess it's taking that first step and being involved. And that's how young people can get their voice or find their voice and then talk for their generation.
No, it's good to hear that there's that clear succession plan, if you will. Garish, I'll come to you and then we'll answer an audience question.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I remembered what I was going to say, and actually Derek prompted that memory. I just wanted to say, so look, I'm slightly skewed from my perspective. So I'm work in a applied research institution where we partner with council, NGOs, etc., who are specifically interested in doing this type of work, right? Engaging with young people, understanding their needs, upskilling, that sort of thing. And so I have a positive view. I'm a glass half full, I guess. I have an optimistic view about where the trajectory of young people's involvement is going, because the organisations that we work with, NGOs, community groups, local government, national government, international agencies, are all interested in doing this type of work genuinely. So 2168 Parliament, we've worked with Derek. We're working with eSafety Commission about engaging young people, having them involved with decision making, that communications, that sort of thing. We've done that work in other LGAs in Australia. We're doing it internationally in the Pacific region. And so, I'm really, and I'm not naive. I understand that there are barriers and there are difficulties, institutional, structural difficulties, but I do see a genuine interest and a growing interest in that work from decision makers and organisations. And then the final thing I'd say is that the work that organisations like Ambasa, JT, and those community groups do in giving young people opportunities and confidence really sets young people up to then potentially, not always, but potentially see pathways to more, more explicit social activism, that sort of, to be involved more. Okay. Because it's understanding, firstly, it's seeing that someone believes in them, giving them an opportunity, and making them realize, actually, it's a self-realization. Actually, I can do this. I'm actually pretty good at this, right? So it's a matter of giving young people that confidence, and the work that JT and other organizations, councils, but NGOs in particular are doing really can set young people up to taking that next step, I think.
No, absolutely. As a young person myself, it is very encouraging to hear when people in like senior positions make space for you to come through. I will turn to probably our last audience question for this session. And I would like to invite Nicole Fairley. If you would like to ask your question verbally, I know you did have your hand raised earlier. If you're still there.
I am. I just unmuted.
Perfect. We can hear you loud and clear.
Great, thanks. Yeah, look, I was just curious, in addition to listening to the conversation, which is great, so thank you, everyone. It's really great to hear the experiences of what you've been doing in Western Sydney. I was just curious to know of examples in terms of bringing agencies together and leading agencies to do this work together, because similarly to Derek, I'm community development in council, and we're working in partnership with a whole lot of agencies. And it's, I think, it's often a resourcing issue as to how we can come together to do this kind of work. And I was just interested to know of some examples of how you guys might have dealt with that in your projects.
Yeah. JT, can I turn to you to speak on that collaboration aspect?
Sure. So what the main factors, I guess, is finding like-minded organizations who, believe in the same core values, that can align with your mission and vision statement. And always keeping that in the forefront of your mind. It has to come from the ground up. And you're not collaborating because funding body or the government says so. You're collaborating for those like-minded, similar characteristics or goals, or even vision and mission. You got to have the same goals. And we find that when you work with organizations who are like-minded, you tend to understand each other better, and things get done. Things do get done, as opposed to working with organizations who don't share the same core values. We find that there's a lot of struggles in that. And the young people need to be there. Going back to the discussion earlier that we just had, the point before this is, people in powerful positions need to vacate their seats for these young people to make decisions for their lives. But yeah, it's finding to answer your question, finding like-minded organizations, and having young people present during these decision makings, because they'll tell the organizations exactly what they need to do.
Derek and Garish, if you had anything to add to that before I move on to them.
Yeah, I agree with what JT said. Within organisations, you'll know people who want to work with you and want to really do that same activity and be supportive and work with the young people. So certainly, work with them, collaborate with them as best as possible. And also, if you do have a youth committee, work with those. Once again, you'll have a few on that who are super keen and have the availability to help. For example, at Liverpool, we have our youth committee and it's been operating for 20 years. And only last year, one of the young people said, why don't we do more collaboration with other youth committees in the area? So, Headspace have a youth committee, Street University, all these other NGOs have, but why are we not working together? So I was like, well, of course, and that came from one of the young people. So yeah, just working with those who want to work with you, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Spot on. And again, that's a prime example of young people having the solution and being able to progress that forward. I would like to ask our panel one last question before we start wrapping up. And it is, what is one tangible thing you would change that impacts young people's lives and to increase safety around young people in Western Sydney? I will start with you, JT.
Do you mind giving me time to think about that one? Pass it on to the next one, passing the mic.
No worries. The next one on my screen is Garish, ready or not. I'll ask the question just one more time. What is one tangible thing you would change that impacts young people's lives, that also increases safety of young people in Western Sydney?
That's one tangible thing. It's an interest. I mean, look, I think what I would come back to is this idea. And I'm cheating a little bit here because it's possibly not tangible in the sense that you want it to be, that maybe you're thinking about. But I keep coming back to this, what we've been talking about this whole session, and that's about the real importance of involving young people, right? You have to involve young people themselves in identifying issues, but coming up with solutions to issues as well. And you have to do that in a sustainable way. And in a way, this comes back to Nicole's point about the resourcing as well. So maybe the tangible thing is more resources to facilitate or enable that engagement of young people, meaningful engagement of young people in that decision-making processes.
Okay, amazing, meaningful resourcing. Wonderful. JT, if you're ready.
I'll jump in, yeah. I totally agree with Dr. Garish. You hit the nail right on the head. For us, it would be letting these young people be in power positions. Let them be the ones to make the final decisions on policies that affect their lives, and make the decisions on what and where the funding goes. And that would be my answer.
Yeah. And Derek, to close us off, one tangible thing.
My one's a little bit left field, but in previous roles, I've worked with Salvo's Youth Link is one agency, and they do outdoor therapy, recreation therapy, and I've just seen massive changes in young people that have participated in those activities. Taking kind of those most vulnerable young people out of their environment into a new environment where you have to build trust and you have to work with each other, but it's a supportive environment, and it gets you thinking. When you put yourself out there, and it starts you to think of that process of, okay, well, what's happening in my life? What changes do I want to make? Am I ready to start looking at those things? So I would say, yeah, if people can get involved in some of those type of activities, that's a resources thing as well, but there are services who provide that. So getting out of your environment, challenging yourself, and looking at, your choices and options.
No, thank you for that. Thank you. Thank you, all three of you, for that. I can see that we haven't gotten through all of our questions, which, I mean, if I had it my way, would continue this until sunset, this conversation until sunset. But our team will get in. If you do have any further questions, get in touch with our team, and we can relay that to our panelists as well. We are coming very close to 2 o'clock, and I know that we are all very busy people doing our part to save the world. So I would like to thank our panelists, JT from BISA, thank you so much for being here. Dr. Girish Lala from Western Sydney University, and Derek from Liverpool Council. I will speak for myself, and I'm probably speaking for a lot of us here today. What an incredible session with a lot of valuable insights. JT reminded us that some young people are experiencing a pandemic every single day their whole lives. And we have the opportunity to include them in some of the decisions that we do make as organizations and institutions. They might be dealing with a lot, but they also know a lot to move forward into the future, and making those spaces for their voices to be heard is crucial for that. I would like to remind you that Western Sydney Community Forum is able to support your organisation, particularly in Western Sydney. We may not have the answers, but we will be able to point you into the right direction. For this session, if you missed out on a little part of it, or you would like to share it with colleagues, it will be available on YouTube as well straight after this session as well. Please do not hesitate to be in contact with us or reach out to us. It is 2 p.m. My name is Catherine. Thank you all so much for being here, and we'll see you next time.